Hello, and welcome to another edition of Great Companies, Great Leaders. I am super honored today to host Carol Poore, who's the president of Poore and Associates Strategic Planning. I'm Christine Gannon, your host, and also the founder and CEO of Brightworks Consulting. And today we are going to be talking about the metaverse and Carol's new book and passion and focus. And before we get started, I always like to give a little bit of background on our guests. So there's some context for our listeners. So Carol is not only the president of Poore and Associates, but she's also the author of several books, to include her newest one, Leadership in the Metaverse. Carol provides strategic planning expertise for corporate, nonprofit, and social sector executive teams, which expands organizational capacity and strategic impact. Her strategic planning framework has assisted client organizations with growth, turnaround, strategic fundraising, venture capital development, storytelling, branding, identity building, and civic engagement, all of which are absolutely critical to the time period we're in right now in business. I think absolutely storytelling has been such a key element for most organizations. So Dr. Poore served on a number of nonprofit and community-based boards spanning social services, healthcare, arts and culture, community development, as well as higher education. She's endorsed by the Association for Strategic Planning, and she serves on a number of higher education boards. Carol, welcome.
Hi, Christine. Great to see you again.
As well. I would love to have you share with our listeners your journey, where you started and the ups and downs of your journey. I think that's super helpful.
Oh, well, thank you. Career-wise, my undergrad was broadcasting and journalism. And so I spent the first, I would say, 6, 7 years in the media, including print, broadcast, television, and radio. And so kind of a nice variety there. And that set the stage for me to be prepared to go into a communications public affairs department at a water power utility. Many may be familiar with Salt River Project. It's a water power organization in Arizona. And so that was a very interesting 16 years there, but not just in the communication public affairs area. After a few years, I moved into the strategic planning area of the organization, where we worked with senior leadership, middle managers, and the workforce. We had about 5,000 employees at that time, to chart the direction of the future, which in the utility industry, you have to do fuel planning and resource planning. That's like 10, 20, 30 years in the future. But strategic planning typically in those days was about 5 years. Now it's compressed to more like 2 or 3 years, depending on the industry. And then help them start a subsidiary company selling energy when we thought deregulation of energy would sweep across the country in the United States. That didn't happen. The way it was structured in California, which was a gigantic experiment, did not go the way that regulators planned, and it was pretty much shut down. But within 2, 3 years of this subsidiary company, we were quite successful in selling energy to customers. We were a $500 million company within 3 years. So that was a great startup experience with a very solid 100-year plus company as an umbrella. So it was a startup, but with the comfort of a very reputable parent company. Then from there, I changed industries. I went into higher education, and I was recruited to take a look at a position, a Vice Provost position at Arizona State University, helping to run one of the campuses, the West Campus. And that was a 6 years of helping that campus grow, and huge growth in enrollment at that time, overseeing all of the fundraising, the public affairs, the marketing, the alumni relations, the everything having to do with outreach. So it was overseeing about 5 or 6 departments, and it was really great leadership and opportunity. Higher ed is very collaborative and different culture than where I'd been before. So that was an interesting experience, learning to thrive in different dynamics and understanding those quickly. From higher ed, I went into nonprofit healthcare leadership. Again, a great opportunity happened where it was an HIV/AIDS organization. It was way out of my field of expertise as far as the topic of HIV and AIDS. I was aware of it, but I had not run a healthcare organization. But the board was looking for someone that could work with government because we had a City of Phoenix bond from the 2006 bond election a long time ago. And that was $4 million, and we had to qualify for it. They needed a leader that could work with government as well as the community. And it was three things: clinical trial research,
Mm,
FDA regulated, and a very rigorous research process for any kind of medication. So it was FDA regulated clinical trial research. It was communication, education, and outreach to the public, and it was a wellness center for those that were impacted by HIV and AIDS. So that was a great 6 years. We established a health center in downtown Phoenix on light rail, and a billionaire, Bob Parsons, and his wife Renee generously donated an initial $5 million, and I believe they've contributed, I would say, up to 12, $13 million now, because they're passionate about this cause and the community. And so since 2013, I decided, instead of going back and working for an organization, to use my expertise to start my own firm. And that was focused on, at first, interim CEO work, mainly for trade associations and nonprofits. But in more recent years, the last 5 or 6 years, I've really focused on strategic planning because I am so passionate about helping an organization chart its own future
mm,
and looking toward the future, but also that operational plan where you have to have a year one implementation to get to that future. And so I've developed a framework that is not a template, because strategic planning can never be templatized, but it is a framework to help, especially mid to smaller size companies, uh, facilitate their own and shape their own strategic planning program. And that's why I wrote this book, Strategic Impact. It brings this three-part framework to life. And then I also decided a few years ago, because I do have real estate holdings, I decided to get my real estate license in Arizona. I grew up in a real estate family, very comfortable with talking real estate, but I decided to take the course, and I had so much fun that I decided to put my license with the brokerage that's right where I live in downtown Phoenix, a group of very seasoned brokers. They took me in knowing I wasn't a broker yet. You have to go through 3 years in Arizona and then take a whole nother state test. But I committed to doing it because I love learning. And I've been very successful to have at least a client or two at any given moment. And that helps to offset the strategic planning business. If it's a little slow on the strategic planning side,
sure.
because it is a specialty, I'm working in real estate. And then generally I teach a course a semester at Arizona State University at the downtown campus. So I'm at a place in my career, and maybe this is encouraging to someone else, where I can mix it up a little bit and use my expertise in a wise way so that I can have a steady flow of business, which I think is one of the biggest learnings in the last few years, is just how to do that so that you're not stuck all of a sudden with no clients.
Right, right. I am so inspired by your journey because you really, when you talked about this season of your career, you're really bringing all the expertise, the wisdom, the knowledge, the learnings, the good and the bad, right? All into this season and capitalizing on that and playing to your strengths, really.
Well, I'm trying to. So I think that's
Well,
all we can do is aspire and do our best to do that, because life can throw you a few curveballs, right?
sure,
And
absolutely. But you are playing to your strengths. I know you well enough. You really, really are. You're incredibly successful, and truly, it's an honor to have just some time with you today because I know how busy you are. And
oh,
you,
I feel the same way with you, my fellow author and friend. So,
yes. So recently you wrote a book. Let's talk about that. You wrote a book about leadership in the metaverse, leadership in the metaverse. And in it, there's several things that you share your research and your perspective on. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
oh my gosh, I would love to talk about it. Leadership is a passion topic of mine. In my dissertation for my doctoral work focused on community revitalization as well, and social capital, social networks that create revitalization. But it also had a deep dive in leadership, the leadership theories of, the research of the last 100+ years since leadership has been studied formally. And so this topic, the metaverse, well, what in the world is the metaverse? Some of you out there may know already, but it is basically a more immersive internet. It's called Web 3. Web 1 was just, hey, we have the internet. Web 2 was social media, the advent of social media around the 2007 time period, where people were now being able to connect with each other online in a much different way, much more personal way. And then Web 3 is this whole idea of an immersive web. And in the future, it's very nascent right now. So we're very introductory stages, very developmental stages, where a lot of the people involved with the technology to create these various virtual worlds, and the gaming industry really is the leader in this, and the entertainment industry too, for animation and things like that. But in the future, we will be able to transverse and go into the internet, possibly with goggles, possibly with a computer chip contact lens, which sounds so crazy, but there's actually
Wow.
one in beta test right now.
Really?
Yes, yes, Moto Lens,
Okay.
MOTO. Go look at their website. You'll see this thing with the little circuitry, and they're testing it right now. And that, in a way, it sounds kind of interesting, especially for people, the younger generations that are used to online, gaming and stuff. That's going to be, oh yeah, I totally get that. But for most of us, we're not used to wearing goggles all the time. And what does that do to the human interaction? And so I started to really be interested in this when I started to learn about the metaverse. And I decided to research the topic and then plug in the topics of leadership so that we can start to be prepared as to what it's going to be when we're even more hybrid. We're already in a hybrid world post COVID, right?
Right.
And and we're comfortable now with Zoom and Teams and meetups and all these
Sure.
things that we can do but what we're noticing as a society, it's just getting harder and harder to encourage people to actually show up.
Yeah.
And people have to decide, how do I want to show up? Do I want to show up online, on screen, as an avatar, as myself, as my photo,
Right.
or just my name? Or do I want to bodily, physically show up? So that's how the research started on the topic. And then I distilled 3 leadership styles that will be vital for the future. So anytime you want to see a few of my visual slides, I am ready to show you.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it.
Well, first, do you have any questions? Did any of that pique your
I
interest?
don't have a question. I have a comment. First and foremost, I think it's fascinating that you took leadership elements that, to your point, 100 years in the study, right? Leadership has been studied, but you're taking these components of leadership and bringing it to the 21st or 22nd, whatever we're in, century, and really ensuring that people understand that leadership is still incredibly critical and how it can integrate with Web3.
Absolutely. Because I don't think, as a society and as a leadership society, people that want to be leaders, that are leaders, all of us are leaders, if we aspire to in our own right, whether we're a solopreneur or we're overseeing a department or a company, whatever. I don't think we're really prepared to understand how this virtual Web3 world, which will be very interoperable, it's not going to be like going to different URL websites. In the future, it'll be like stepping from one world to the next world, whether it's a company like a Walmart, they're already experimenting with this technology, or Nike. And then continuing to get people on that same page, so to speak, moving forward as an organization, because there's going to be so many bells, whistles, and distractions. It's going to be
Yes.
pretty cool, but it's also going to be, kind of challenging to
Yes.
really get a mindset of where we're going together, not just individually with our headset on.
I was having this conversation with my 20-year-old son last night about the metaverse, preparing for our conversation this morning. And he said to me, Mom, I can go have lunch with a bunch of people on an island and we can all interact as avatars with our own voices and enjoy lunch together. And I'm just, my mind is expanding. It's amazing.
Absolutely, because technology such as VR, virtual reality, is becoming better and better. And actually, there are case studies, real life case studies, where um, surgeons in the medical field, they're using like augmented reality with like their a 3D
Mm.
picture of somebody showing them
Yes.
natural, and actually doing surgery using this technology, and they're getting inside the person's, bones or body or whatever, and they're able to see in a different way to be able to perform real life surgery. So the technology is fascinating, and it's phenomenal. And in the future, if we do have the goggles or sleek glasses, whatever it's going to be, or a contact lens, um, we're going to be like sitting in the same room on a couch. We're not going to be on two screens anymore.
Right.
So it's fascinating, and I'm glad to share a couple of little
Yes, go
snippets
ahead.
from a presentation. So I'll share what I definitely want you to see something real. So during my research process, I actually went to a meta festival, and that's me and the avatar there with the little headset on, the little
That's
bob
fabulous. I
bob
love your outfit, Carol.
yeah, well, they gave you a choice. You can sign up as a certain thing. And here's more. And this is just me taking pictures of me on my screen. And this was a gigantic experiment. It was held in three places, three regions of the world. So this was a live, really a live conference where you could roam around in your avatar, as well as uh, uh, see a panel, and there were some live speakers. It was really an interesting experience exploring this meta festival. And then part of my research, real life. A lot of people have probably heard of EXP Realty. It's an
Yes.
international brand. They're really big on having a metaverse environment already, where you go online as an avatar and you're meeting up with people, and you can go. I actually interviewed this guy Matthew, and he took me into his metaverse world, and I was standing with him in line to ask a question from the EXP corporate office. So there he is, and you can't really see me because I'm just like part of his guest background, but it's a real environment. Here is an example of some companies that already exist. They're ready to help you create your own avatar, and there are websites that you can create your own avatar with the technology. But there's companies that will actually help you create uh, outfits and your persona, or multiple personas. And this is one of the things I was really interested in, is that in the future we might choose 100 different avatars to show up. And if I'm feeling like I want to wear punk rock outfit, I go ahead and show up
Right.
like that. Or if I
Right.
want to be a teddy bear, like the Board Ape Yacht Club, people should go to see this. It is where you could buy an ape, and I believe that there are no more apes. You have to actually buy from other owners. But with
Carol.
cryptocurrency, you buy
Yes.
cryptocurrency. It's not with cash,
No.
and the you own the asset. So we could get into a whole session about non-fungible tokens, NFTs, but people are
I got
buying
an education last night. I really did, and it was mind-blowing.
exactly.
Ethereum and owning these assets and making money and losing money with these assets. And yes, it's phenomenal. We should do another podcast on that.
Yeah, I know it's a whole. And if anybody in the audience would like me to do a presentation for their organization, I have a really exciting one. I'm giving it in just a few minutes to a group of government leaders, and I think it's going to be really fun. But the big question is, so we have Web3 also being called Web Me, because it's all about the individual and where they want to explore. What about Web We? What about creating communities? And I discovered that there's this communities. One is little c community, and the next is big C community. And this is a huge cultural mind shift, thinking about little c and big C. So all metaverse communities and all communities really start with a base of little c. And what does that have in it? Well, it's a shared experience of some sort. There's some kind of community membership, whether it's formal or informal. There's a general sense of belonging, and maybe some kind of bi-directional engagement. For example, if you want to enter the world, you have to give us your email. And now we'll be able to put you on our list. So it's a bi-directional not just one way. And there's some kind of an emotional connection. And I referred to Nike and Walmart earlier. They actually have experimental sites called Nike Land and Walmart Land. And there's a lot of companies dipping their toe in the water because this kind of technology will be used to engage new customers, younger generations, and engage people in a whole different playful kind of way to try on digital clothing, to order things online. It's going to be a whole different experience. But what is Big C? Big C is really building on little c, but it's creating that transformational community of interest, action, and impact. So it's making a real impact in our physical world. And that's really where community members take individual collective action on our biological physical planet. It requires a significant human investment of dialogue, debate, deliberation, and sometimes the friction of civil discourse, which we really need a lot more of today, is
Yes.
civil discourse, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, it's not just popping in and out of Nike Land or Carol Poore World or whoever. It is not just popping in and out for a few minutes and playing a few games, but it's really long-term relationship building and a commitment to action. So that's the difference. And now I want to just lay out the 3 leadership styles that I think are going to be really vital for the future. First is the agile strategic leader. And that's going to be a leader that's interdisciplinary and inclusive. So not just having one style of skill sets on your management team or input from one mindset or background or age group or ethnicity group, but it's being inclusive to develop strategic advantage. The second is being an authentic leader. And there's been a lot talked about in the past about authentic leadership, but this is going to become more important than ever when you think about people showing up in 100 different avatar outfits,
Right.
right? It's like, how do you know the person is real? And how do you develop authenticity in both your physical world and the digital world, creating empathy and trust? And then the third leadership style builds on a leadership style that's been around in theory since the 1970s, and that's servant leadership. But I add the servant leader community builder. So not just serving others and having a heart to serve others, but also being able to build communities in physical digital worlds and bringing those worlds together. So a few components about agile strategic leadership: it creates a welcoming, participative culture. It's future oriented and creating purpose for where we're all going together. But it also is leadership that's agile, it's flexible, and it's adjusting the course when needed. So it's not going to be a leader that is just focused on 3 to 5 years from now, but it's a leader
Sure.
focused on the future, but ready to change if we need to tomorrow for some major tweak. And of course, during COVID, we heard a lot about pivot. Next, the authentic leader is a leader that is able to build trust. And I really talk about this a lot in the book about how do you build trust? How do you build empathy? And personal trust is transparent. It demonstrates personal integrity. And a really interesting point about being authentic and building trust is that others need to know your personal abilities and competencies. So you can't hide your talents under a bushel. You've got to be able to appropriately show people that you're competent. And then finally, the servant leader community builder is, again, a person that has heart for building those human connections through social capital. And the idea of understanding that social capital is really part of a whole ecosystem of capitals: financial, the built capital, natural environmental capital, cultural capital, human capital. Social capital is all about important human networks, networks that matter. So that's those 3 leadership skills I talk about a lot in the book. Way too much information now, but if anybody wants a little bit more, feel free to reach out and contact me.
Okay, we're going to talk about that in a minute, how they can reach you. But a couple things I wanted to pull out of the information you shared. First and foremost, everyone should read this book because you sent it to me and I literally couldn't put it down. It was so fascinating in terms of looking through leadership through this metaverse lens, really, and no pun intended, but really looking through a different lens at the leaders that will be the leaders and how we need to stand up differently, right?
Yeah.
In this Web3. But also one of the points that you didn't share that I saw on your slide was self-care. Practicing self-care as an authentic leader, right? In previous decades, let's say, working 90 hours a week was applauded, and people thought, you were a rock star if you had no social life because you were just dedicating everything to your business or a corporate business, and people are burnt out. And I think moving into this new leadership realm, understanding and showing your teams and others, what's your community, that self-care is critical. If you're on E, you have nothing to lead with. So I love that you have that in the book, and just appreciate that you pulled that out as well.
Absolutely. Because without that self-care and feeling healthy and vital, you can't be an authentic leader and care about others. You can't have that genuine empathy if
No,
there is so much, going on stress wise, or being not being healthy, or having, issues with your health.
sure.
So it is a huge, and it's not just me saying this. This is research. Research is showing that to care about others, we can't give what we don't have. We've got to care about ourselves first. And that's not selfish. That is just being healthy. And so, yeah, I think that's a really big, important point.
I agree. I agree. So, Carol, thank you. This has been tremendous. And I am highly encouraging leaders that are listening from organizations to reach out to you and engage, because I know your presentations and the content and the research that you have, the best practices as we move into this new realm, are so critical for people's success. How can they find you? Where can they reach you?
Well, thanks for asking. My website is my name. It is www.carol, Carol, Poore, Poore.com.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, Carol, thank you. I know you'll be back to talk more about how this is unfolding, but thanks for being with us today.
Oh, so much fun. It's just like the edge of peeling an onion, right? There's so many layers underneath, and it really is an exciting topic. So I look forward to talking to you later.
Thank you.
Brightworks Consulting hosts this podcast and YouTube channel to spotlight the leadership around the world that is changing lives. Brightworks offers a myriad of consulting services in the public and private sector, to include diversity, equity, and inclusion solutions for any size company. You can find us at www.brightworksconsulting.com. We're honored to have Best Companies AZ as a presenting sponsor for this podcast. Best Companies AZ is your #1 source for regional employer branding. You can find them at www.bestcompaniesaz.com.